This is an MCP 5-minute moment, brought to you by the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection's Bureau of Waste Site Cleanup. My name is Paul Locke. Today we'll be talking about the differences between releases and sites under the MCP and why, when you look at the numbers don't add up. And when I say numbers, I'm talking about the statistics that the Bureau of Waste Site Cleanup publishes on MassDEP's website. You can see the address of the website down at the bottom of this slide. And the big red arrow is pointing to the link, Statistics on Cleaning Up Oil and Hazardous Waste Sites in Massachusetts, that would lead you to the numbers. There's a table called 21E Program Notification Statistics, which basically on the left-hand side goes down from early years 1985 through fiscal year 2015. And it provides the number of notifications, new release notifications, that the Department of Environmental Protection has received over the years. The release notifications are broken down to the 2-hour, 72-hour, and 120-day notifications that we receive, the different categories of notifications. But for our purposes, we're concerned now with just the total number of notifications that we've received over a year. We'll zoom in a little bit, and you'll see in the lower right-hand corner that the total number of notifications that MassDEP has received since 1985 adds up to 46,700. Similarly, there's a table that provides the number of sites that have been cleaned up over the years. This table only goes back as far as fiscal year 1994, which is when the new semi-privatized regulations went into effect. But this provides the number of sites, and it's broken down by the different closure categories. Again, not important for this exercise. But the number of sites cleaned up year by year up through fiscal year 2015. Zooming in again, we see that there were 34,233 sites cleaned up between fiscal year 1994 and 2016. So based on this data, there are 12,467 more notifications coming in to DEP than sites that were cleaned up. The seemingly obvious conclusion from this data is that more than a quarter of the notifications that come into the department haven't been cleaned up yet. That's 27%. But the seemingly obvious is actually more complicated and more subtle than that. First, while many people use the terms release and site interchangeably, they're not the same thing. The term release addresses all of those great action words that describe how oil hazardous material gets into the environment in the first place. Spilling, leaking, pumping, injecting, escaping, emptying, dumping, disposing. All of those great words. The word site describes the building, the location, the installation, the container, the motor vehicle, the landfill, the ditch, the place where the oil or hazardous material has been deposited, stored, disposed of, or placed, or otherwise come to be located. I like that part. Otherwise come to be located. So you can have several releases at the same location. So multiple releases will create just a single site. Let's use statistics from 2010 as an example to study how notifications become sites and what happens to them. Releases that were notified in 2010 should just about be finished cleaning up and closing out at the end of fiscal year 2016. We see that in 2010, there were 1,297 new MCP notifications, and we can see the same 1,297 notifications as bar chart. Of these, 18, about 1%, are considered adequately regulated, meaning that another regulatory program is overseeing the assessment and cleanup of these properties, and that they are not following the MCP, and thus those notifications do not need MCP closure. Another 59 of the notifications were related to utility work. These notifications are tracked as they come in, but they do not have to go through the regulatory process of assessment and remediation and closure. 111 of these notifications, about 9% of the total, are actually new notifications for releases at existing 21E sites. So this is a situation I was talking about before, where you have multiple releases at one site or one location. Within DEP, we call these daughter RTNs, and they're linked to the primary RTN that was initially given to the first release. That leaves 1,109, or about 85% of these new notifications from fiscal year 2010, that require separate and unique MCP closure. And 6 years later, in fiscal year 2016, let's take a look at what happened to these 1,109 new notifications from 2010 that required separate and unique MCP closure. About 4% of these sites are still works in progress. They're either about to close out or they've received extensions and the assessment and remediation work is continuing. In a small number of sites, about 2% from 2010, there is a lack of progress, and these are sites where the responsible parties might have filed for financial inability, or these may be abandoned properties, or this may be cases of midnight dumping when there is nobody to carry forward. There are also cases where there is a responsible party and they do have obligations, but they're just not fulfilling them. And those are cases where DEP would look to take enforcement actions. But the vast majority of the sites, about 94%, have been closed pursuant to the regulations in a timely fashion. So a few takeaways. One, keep in mind that while we report releases, the MCP focuses on cleaning up sites. Not all reported releases actually become sites that require closure, and a site may be comprised of several notified releases. Finally, most sites achieve MCP closure within the required 6-year time period. This has been an MCP 5-Minute Moment. Thank you for listening.